Hey, welcome back to the fourth and final installment of Exponents. To conclude this, at the beginning, we talked about exponents and gave you an introduction to exponents. The second part of my videos, we talked about multiplication. The third, we talked about dividing, and now we're talking about the power rule. Now, when we think of the power, I want you to automatically think of multiply. So when we multiplied exponents in my second video, we added the exponents. The third video, we talked about dividing, so we subtracted the exponents. Now we're going to use the power rule, and we're going to multiply the exponents. So let's just say we had x squared to the third power. Now, a common mistake would be we would say, okay, that's x, 2 plus 3, which is x to the fifth. This is not how we do this. And the reason why we do not do this is because, first of all, there's not two different bases. It's not like it's saying x squared times x to the third. It's saying x squared to the third power. So by this rule, what we're going to do is we're going to say x, that's our base, 2 times 3, which is x to the sixth. Now, I also like showing this like a visualization part of this. So what this x to the second to the third power means, it means I've got 3x squares. Now, this is the same as we're multiplying every one of these. So in this case, we could say x squared plus 2, which would give us the x to the sixth power. So I'm going to add something to this. What about if you had 3n to the third power, and we're going to take it to the fourth power? Now, so most of us are going to think, okay, 3 times 4, so that's going to be n to the 12th. But what do we do with this 3? This 3 we also take to the fourth power. Now, in my first video, I showed us how to do this. So 3 to the fourth power would be 81 n to the 12th. Maybe I have negative 2 m n squared to the third power. Okay, so this means I'm going to put my negative 2 to the third power. I'm going to say m. Now, this is an understood 1. So this is like saying 1 times 3. N is 2 times 3. So my final answer would be, what is negative 2 to the third power? Well, since it's a negative base, the power is odd. I know it's negative, so it's going to be negative 8. M is 1 times 3, which is 3. And N is 2 times 3, which is 6. Now I'm going to make this really, really, really interesting to some of us. Now I'm going to say negative 2, maybe m to the third, n to the fourth, over, maybe we'll do 5 p maybe to the 6th, and maybe r to the 7th. And we're going to square this. So now this looks very complicated, but we want to piece it all into little pieces. Try not to think about it as a whole, but try to piece it together. So my first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, negative 2 squared. My m is 3 times 2. My n is 4 times 2. 5 squared. P is 6 times 2, and my R is 7 times 2. Negative 2 squared, since my base is negative, my power is an even one. My exponent is even. My answer is going to be positive 4. M would be 6. N 8 over 5 squared is 25. P 12, and finally R to the 14th. Now, one last thing I want to show us is what happens when we have maybe x to the 0, and we say that is equal to 1. And we always say that this is a property, but some of us in here would like a good explanation of this. So I'm going to use, because this is dealing with exponents, x to the 0 equals 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to demonstrate this. X, I'm going to just make up an exponent, 5, and I'm going to put it over x over 5. Now, in our previous lesson, same base, subtract, and you get x equals 0. But now take a look at this. What happens with my x to the 5th and x to the 5th? They cancel each other and find a 1. So what is left is this, the 1 and the x0. That is why, in this case, x to the 0 equals 1. Now, what about if we put maybe negative 8, and then we'll say n to the 0 power? Well, my negative 8 stays where it's at. N to the 0 power is just 1. So negative 8 times 1 is negative 8. What about if I had 10, and then maybe I had 20 a squared, b squared, c to the 3rd, d to the 3rd, to the 0 power? Well, I cannot do anything with a 10 yet, but now everything inside of this parentheses comes out to be 1. So that means 10 times 1 is 10. That is the answer we're looking at. So I hope this series has been kind of helpful with exponents. Thank you for listening,